The PS2 generation was full of quality action RPGs. Within the superhero space, we had the excellent Marvel Ultimate Alliance and the X-Men Legends games. These blended the stories and characters from the comics into a hack-and-slash gameplay setting. DC Comics wanted a piece of this, and worked with Snowblind Studios to make an action RPG where the players could be different members of the Justice League. This wasn't the first time that Snowblind Studios had worked within this space. They spent most of the PS2 generation making memorable action RPGs. They worked with Sony to make the Champion series, and before that, they worked with Interplay to develop an action RPG that was set to help the publisher establish a foothold within the console space. Interplay was interested in bringing their Baldur's Gate series to the consoles, but instead of a port, they wanted Snowblind Studios to make an original experience focused on that market. Join me as we take a look back at Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. During the PS2 generation, Interplay Entertainment was aiming to make a big push within the console market. They were very much interested in bringing their Baldur's Gate series to this space. Through the use of their division Black Isle Studios, they made efforts to create these console-focused experiences. The Baldur's Gate series had a strong fan base on PC, and they wanted to create a spin-off series for the console market. This resulted in Black Isle contracting with Snowblind Studios to work on this spin-off. Snowblind was known for their work with the Top Gear racing games on the N64, and this pivot to the RPG space would be something very new to the studio. Both the developer and the publisher wanted this game to be made on a brand new engine that would take advantage of the PS2. The developers would focus on developing for this one system, and then planned on porting the game to other major platforms at the time. The publisher had big plans for this new engine and wanted to use it for future projects on the PS2. Like I said before, Interplay wanted to cement themselves to console players during this generation. The gameplay in this spin-off would be very different from the PC counterparts, as this game would have a real-time hack-and-slash system. Snowblind would set their game in the Forgotten Realms campaign setting of the popular Dungeons & Dragons pen and paper game. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance was set to be an action role-playing game with a focus on gaining and equipping better loot. The basic plot of the game would center around the player arriving to the port city of Baldur's Gate. It is here that the player is attacked by the Thieves Guild, which starts the main quest. The player can choose between 3 different character classes for their adventure: an archer, fighter, and sorceress. Each of the different character classes would come with their own unique abilities. Snowblind planned on using the Forgotten Realms to help paint their world and characters, as the Diablo series and Gauntlet were the inspirations for the gameplay. Dark Alliance was aiming to have 50 levels divided into 3 different acts. Players would fight through the sewers of the city, in secret hideouts, ice mountains, and many more locations. Along with this, the player would work to unlock a 4th character by completing a set of challenges. The game could be completed in single player and in co-op play. Oddly enough, the game was in the talks to be ported to the PC as well. Interplay felt that this new spin-off would be very successful on the PC, and began contracting with CD Projekt, who would later go on to make the Witcher series, to begin this port. Sadly, the contract fell through and the PC port was cancelled. Snowblind Studios was in a really interesting position for this project. It is always interesting to see a studio that is known for making games in one genre, and then see them pivot towards another. This studio began as one that developed racing games for the N64, and were now making one of the first action role-playing games within the console space. In December 2001, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance was released to the world. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance is an action RPG that provides an addictive gameplay loop, good progression with a familiar execution in an inviting fantasy setting. Dark Alliance doesn't really change the game for the genre, but rather focuses on respecting the best parts about it, and providing that experience to console players. While it wears its influences from Diablo on its sleeve, the execution and quality allows it to separate itself from its influences. This results in an enjoyable action RPG experience, and one returning back to with its high level of replay value.
You have accomplished far more than I could have hoped. Truly, the Harpers are blessed to have you among our number. You have my thanks, and the thanks of all of Baldur's Gate.
When it comes to the gameplay, it operates how you would expect it to. You have a main attack for your equipped weapon, a button for your different skills, a useful block for defense, and a jump used for some of the light platforming along with helping you escape from being cornered by the enemies. You can switch to different spells and skills on the fly along with switching to another set of equipped weapons, allowing for you to adapt to different combat situations. The action is very enjoyable. You will be spending most of your time hacking and slashing at enemies. The attacks, spells, and skills have pretty good sound effects, but what really sells the action are the impact of your hits. Attacking and defeating enemies will cause pieces of the enemies to be hacked off. Dark Alliance can be deliciously violent, with the spells adding another layer of satisfaction to this. For example, frozen enemies tend to move slower, but if you defeat a frozen enemy, they will shatter into pieces of ice. These small details heighten the combat encounters and show the power behind your attacks. Another effect that I like was how defeated zombies have a tendency to look like they are defeated, but then they start crawling towards you to get a hit in. The game comes packed with all manner of different creatures to fight, along with different enemy classes like melee and range fighters, slower but powerful giants, mages, and much more. The developers show that they understood what makes a fun action RPG, and it shows within the gameplay. Dark Alliance has enjoyable hack and slash combat from beginning to end. What really makes this game addicting is the progression. As you kill enemies and complete main and side quests, you will earn experience points. Each level up will provide you with a set of skill points that you can use to unlock new or better your current skills. These range from active and passive based abilities. Every few levels you will gain an attribute point that you can use to improve one of your several attributes. There is a good amount of customization and room for player expression within this department to really make a character class unique to your style. You start out with three character classes, an archer, a fighter, and a mage, and unlock a secret fourth class. The archer is focused on range attacks, but you can also develop him in such a way that he is great for fighting at range and up close depending on what skills and attributes you invest in. This allows you to essentially create these fun hybrid-like classes. Also, all of the skills are visible to the player from the start, so you can really take your time to really plan out a build. I spent most of my time with the mage, and I was really impressed with how these character classes allow you a lot of options in how you upgrade them. With the mage, I opted to focus on improving her health and strength attributes, since these stats start out a lot lower, and I put her skill points into her ability to call forth a magical sword that will attack enemies for you. This allowed me to turn her into a battle mage that could take several more hits than a mage that would just focus on maxing out their spells. I really like how the leveling allows you the freedom to create your own personalized character classes along with making hybrid versions of them, and this extends out to the loot as well. While the mage naturally has a focus on spells, I opted to equip her with attachments that improved her strength, so that she could do more melee damage along with being able to carry much more loot. This then meant that I could equip heavy armor and as such take more hits from enemies. Dark Alliance presents you with a blank slate for each of your characters that have areas that they are naturally good in, but if you want to take your character class in a different direction, you can, and you are rewarded for it. This personalized element enhanced the replay value and invited me to play the game again and try out different combinations. You will find plenty of loot while playing the game. Dark Alliance does a decent job of giving you lots of items to either equip or sell. I actually found many of the items in the shop to be pretty useful to buy, when I could use a nice boost until I found something better through combat. The drop rates are pretty good, and you can sell all of your unused loot for gold. Dark Alliance's loot and leveling keeps things addictive and does what you would want and expect from a good game in this genre. Most of the combat will consist of you fighting different types of enemies with some boss fights to bookend the areas. The boss fights are generally fun, but some can be a bit cheese, taking some of the wind out of the encounters, making them feel a bit rough in the execution. We will get into this more later on. To change up the gameplay are some light puzzles along with some platforming parts. Both are brief diversions and do not get that involved. After you complete the game, you will unlock the Gauntlet mode, which is a set of hard fights that you need to complete in 15 minutes with a new character. After beating this, you will unlock Extreme mode, which is a harder version of the campaign. After completing this, you will unlock a fourth character. The new character is a dual-wielding ranger and has a lot of skills that allow you to use a lot of useful passive buffs. It is important to note too that you can grind and sort of have access to a New Game Plus option. While playing the game, if you find that you need to grind, you can start a new game up and then import your old character into this new game. This means that you will need to restart the game, but this can provide you with additional level ups and money to improve your chances for survival. The Extreme mode is a harder version of this, but you cannot carry over any equipment that you had from the regular modes. The importing system is a bit convoluted since the game doesn't really spell out how it works, but with some fiddling you will understand it and it's really useful. Another thing that I want to make note of is how the game can be a bit slow to get started. The initial set of dungeons are very simple with some fun secrets to find, but everything gets a lot more engaging after the first major boss encounter, as you enter dungeons with more complexity and optional paths to them. And while the game is a blast in single player, the option to play the entire thing in two-player couch co-op is a wonderful option. There is a story present throughout the game, but it mainly acts as a means to bring context to the action. The world is dark and interesting enough with some good voice acting for the characters. Most of the story is conveyed through these first-person like dialogue sequences. There isn't really anything exciting about the presentation here, but this is not a game that you will be playing for the plot or the characters. It is all focused on the gameplay. Dark Alliance is a really solid action RPG, and considering that many of the big PC-based action RPGs were not released on home consoles, this meant that this game was probably many of people's introduction to this genre. It hits many of the core elements that you would want, while also doing enough to provide itself with its own identity. And while I very much enjoyed Dark Alliance when it came out and returning back to it, there are some flaws that I want to discuss. There are some small things that will stick out to the player, like the clunky aiming for ranged attacks, along with no arrow counter being present on the screen. There are a few sections with instant kill parts, one with these death turrets and another in an area with holes that you can fall into. Both are annoying and thankfully they are not in the game much. I did get stuck in the environment once and had to use a recall potion to be able to go back to town. There is one quest that has you finding a hidden entrance to a base, and the game says to go in a certain direction to find it, except the map does not have any form of a compass, so you have no idea where to go. And since the map moves, you don't really know what actually is north, making this part a little annoying. A simple compass icon would have fixed this completely. My biggest issue is how some of the boss fights can be pretty easily cheesed with them getting stuck in the environment, or them not causing any damage to you. The final boss is a bit anticlimactic since I was able to just use my block and my magical sword to slowly kill her. I do want to make note that this game is really tough, even on easy, and it will put up a fight. It is not a cakewalk, and as a result I spent some of my time grinding to be able to increase my chances of survival. There are some parts that I feel like could use some better balancing, with some enemies being able to almost kill you in one hit, and others doing a more appropriate amount of damage. Dark Alliance isn't without its flaws, and while these can be annoying, the action remains fun and the progression and loot keep the game fresh and addictive. Before we move to the conclusion, I want to mention the soundtrack. While there are some long stretches without any tracks, when the music is present, it's great stuff. Here are a few tracks from the game. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance is a solid action RPG and an underrated game. While this game did receive the deserved amount of praise when it was released, it has mostly been forgotten about and not mentioned when great historical action RPGs are brought up. Many look to the PC space and cite the usual suspects within this area, and in many ways this makes sense since those PC games are very good and continue to be good. But within the console space, Dark Alliance was where many players first experienced this addictive and enjoyable genre. Dark Alliance may not have invented the genre, but it definitely showed how it understood it. This game hits many of the expected beats that a player would want, along with making a unique and memorable experience exclusive to this game. Unexpectedly in 2022, Dark Alliance received a re-release on all major platforms, giving this game another chance to live again, and it holds up very well. While the re-release could have used some more modern features like online co-op, I am happy to see this easily available to new players. Dark Alliance is a very enjoyable and addictive action RPG with some very solid build diversity. I highly recommend checking this one out, and thank you very much for watching.